Live.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's edition of Facebook Live from Mesa Public Schools. I'm Holly Williams, Associate Superintendent, and I'm so glad that you're here to join us to talk about COVID-19 in our schools. We have some conversations to have with you today about the mitigation strategies that we have in place and the plan that we have coming into second semester in our 2 weeks of remote so that we can regather our data. And I have a proud principal of Longfellow Elementary with me today, Amy Delatorre. Amy, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Amy Delatorre, the principal at Longfellow, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk about some of the mitigation strategies we have in place and some of the things that we'll be planning as we come into the spring semester.
Amy brings a great perspective with us today to talk from what our elementary school students and families can expect. She'll talk to you about specifics at Longfellow and then more general topics, and she can answer questions about how elementary students can expect to experience remote learning for the 2 weeks that when we come back into spring. And also what the next, what do we have, 7 days left of our semester? This semester we can expect. So thank you for being here. So before we get going into the questions today, I thought I'd give just a little bit of background. Many of you know that you received a letter last week talking about our decisions, and you're probably wondering, okay, why did Mesa make these decisions? And so I thought today I'd share a little bit with you about the why behind the decision. You know, if you watch the news at all, that COVID-19 is on the rise here in Arizona and across the United States. So it's not a unique problem for Arizona, but we are seeing heavy case numbers, positive cases here in Arizona and in Mesa. I'd like to say when I look at the Maricopa County data that I could blame it all on those folks in Tullison, but we have our fair share here in Mesa too. So when we talk about the rise in cases, we know that we have to pay attention to how they're impacting our schools because communities, you know, we live in our communities, we work in our communities, and we shop in our communities. And so our exposure to the virus puts our schools at risk when the virus is in what's considered now substantial spread. So as we talk about it, we have committed in Mesa for the remainder of the semester, and we've been doing this since we reopened, is evaluating our schools school by school, classroom by classroom. And what that means is on a daily basis, we take a look at the cases being reported to us. We look at the county and state data, the neighborhood data, the zip code data. We look at how many students we have out on quarantine codes. We look at our absences, both for adults and for students, and we make decisions school by school, classroom by what's necessary. So what does that mean? Well, let's say we have an outbreak in a team or a classroom, and we have a number of close contacts, and we have several positives in that classroom. Well, that would mean that we would take that classroom from the current learning model, which is a 5-day in person, to a remote or a quarantine model so that those students have a chance and that classroom has a chance to get healthy. We've done that with teams. We've done that with specific classrooms. We've done that with specific courses at the high school level. And that has proved to be a decent mitigation strategy. We have seen our numbers drastically go down when we employ that strategy. So that's classroom by classroom. School by school, if we have an outbreak at a school that causes us to have a struggle with the operation of the school, like in the case of one of our elementaries where we had a number of staff members test positive and we knew that it was spreading fairly rapidly. We were seeing increased cases each day and we were having trouble getting enough subs to cover and open safely. That school went into remote for 2 weeks. The difference in the caseload for that school from the 2 weeks before we closed to now is dramatically changed for the better, and that school reopened this week with very few cases. So we're excited to see that mitigation strategy works. So we know that that's a strategy that works for us and something that we will continue to do once we reopen after the remote learning session in January. So why did we decide to do the January remote learning? Well, we have prioritized all along through our Safe, Strong, and Ready that student and staff safety is our priority. And in order to ensure that, we have to have accurate data. And so when I talk to you about school by school and classroom by classroom, we have to have data to do that. And we know that during Christmas, folks will not be reporting because we won't be working. We won't be here to gather the information. And so we believe that in order to do that accurately, that school by school, classroom by classroom, we have to get back in session in a remote setting and encourage families to tell us their health status so that on the 19th, we can make the best decisions school by school. We will use, of course, the county metrics to help guide our decisions, but we believe that if we have very few cases being reported in a school, the best place for children is in-person learning, and that's a commitment that we're making. So we have that as our model, and that's what we plan to do when we reopen. So I say that, and I think you should know, what does remote learning look like during that time. So Amy, do you want to share what families can expect in remote learning?
Sure. So, of course, we in Mesa Public Schools have a dedication to the commitment to every child every day. We want every child engaging in online learning every single day. And I know my teachers have worked extremely hard to ensure that that is happening. Some things that'll be very similar is obviously Canvas will continue to be something that is used with all students. Specials, students will still have their special schedule. That'll be something that continues on. There will be some changes as well. Of course, there will be some schedule changes based off of, especially in the junior highs and high schools, and then also some teacher changes, depending on how many students we are changing for the next semester. That is how those changes will occur. Attendance will be a little bit different. So students, when they arrive to the online classes, teachers will take attendance based on students joining in for those sessions, which is just a little bit different. We were using Canvas at times to say, did a student log into Canvas? That will no longer be part of the attendance. At Longfellow specifically, as far as when our changes, we'll be communicating that with our families next week. They'll get information on who their new teacher will be if there's a change to that teacher. And then we're also going to host a small little informal meet the teacher so that the families can get onto WebEx and be able to meet those teachers, ask any questions they may have, especially as these changes are occurring, as we know that might bring some concerns or stress or whatever, just to help people feel a little bit more comfortable and for the student to see that teacher and know what those expectations will be. So those are some of the things that'll change, some of the things that'll stay the same as we move into January.
Great, thank you. We've got some questions coming in, and maybe you can help answer this one, from a principal perspective. They're asking, how come they can't make learning model changes more frequently than semester by semester? How come they can't change it quarterly or more frequently?
So I would say one of the biggest pieces to that is when we are making these changes, they're quite large. We have to look at our staff, which staff is going to be working in the remote setting, which staff may be in the in-person setting. And when we're constantly making those changes, that really kind of impacts that piece quite a bit. We, of course, also want that consistency for our students. If there's this constant change in staff, then it's students getting comfortable with the new learning from a different staff member or whatever that may look like. I know, again, from my campus, it has been really challenging. As of current, we have a very high number of students that are in the remote setting and a lower number of students that are in the in-person setting. And so making too many shifts into remote puts the classes very large, which doesn't allow for that teacher to be able to give as much of that individualized as we may want. And then for next semester, that's shifting for me. So the in-person constant moving, if we were to open up for constant moving from in-person to remote, or sorry, remote to in-person, may cause those same type of concerns. So as much as we wish we could, I think from many standpoints, that's a huge undertaking on each individual campus. And specifically, I can speak from an elementary perspective that it does take quite a bit.
I think that part that you said is really accurate. That's and smart about the balancing of the classes. You wouldn't want a remote teacher to have 45 and the in-person teacher to have 10 because more people chose and because you
Right.
didn't keep it balanced. So that balance is an
Right.
important part because we know that teachers need a balanced class for many reasons, but among the most important is the access to the students. And if they have too many, they're just not giving them that quality feedback and time that they deserve to have. So
Absolutely.
I think that's a really good point you made. So someone asks about the data and other pieces of data that we're watching. So I'll take that one specifically around, are we watching the data around hospital capacity? Absolutely. And we're also watching the COVID-like illness data. So we have regular conversations. We have a great relationship with the county health department, and the doctors there who run that department and the administrators down there are so gracious to meet with us and answer our questions either by text, or they'll take a few minutes and jump on a WebEx to have a conversation that we have. And so they help us navigate the world of the data. I'll tell you, starting this year, tell me to look at an epi curve and I would have been like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So lots of time to kind of digest the data and understand what it means. And they work with us to look at the hospital data, the COVID-like illness, what it means to see a curve that's going straight up, and what the anticipated learning model recommendations will be based on that curve. So yes, we do watch the data, and the county helps us with that dramatically. Somebody else asked, what's the criteria for the school by school? I'll tell you, it differs depending on what I'm talking about. So right now, a lot of the conversations are about when did the cases occur. So on the dashboard, you might see a high number of cases for a high school, but they happened over that Thanksgiving break. And so the students haven't been in contact with anybody because they were off for Thanksgiving, but we still report them to you because we want you to know that there has been a case, because maybe the last day they were in attendance was the 24th, which was the day before Thanksgiving, but they haven't been back. So for 2 full weeks. And so we're running into some of that right now, where the case counts look high because coming out of Thanksgiving, we did have some spikes in our numbers, but we are paying attention to the exposure and how many students are at risk and have close contact, and then we make decisions about the closure. So it's a different conversation with each school, and it's a different circumstance because, while I gave the example earlier of an elementary school that we put into remote learning because of the adults, for one of our high schools, we put them into an A/B schedule because we had a lot of students being impacted, and they had a lot of students in class. And by spreading those students out, we've slowed the growth of the virus at that school. So it's a school. It's literally school by school. I don't have a formula that says when you hit this number, this is what it is. It's looking at numerous factors to make the decision. Amy, you can answer this one for us. They're asking about on-site centers. Can you describe, are on-site centers going to be available during the 2 weeks of remote, and what can people expect?
Yep. So on-sites are available during the 2 weeks of remote, and I believe that the registration went out today, I want to say,
That's right.
this morning. And so you should have received that registration link for your individual school. It will be at every school during these 2 weeks of remote learning. You would sign up there. If for some reason you get that you are unable to sign up, it could be because that campus is full. My suggestion would be to call that campus, that school, and talk to them about if there is any more openings, just to kind of know for sure. But yes, they will be available. It depends on the capacity at each campus, what that is, but they will be open.
Great. And we will be providing lunch at many meals for pickup at several of our elementaries, and that information is on the Food and Nutrition website here at mpsaz.org. And it will be available at every junior high, every high school, and selected elementary schools. And it will be the drive-through pickup that we had early in the fall. So families can drive through, pick up lunch and breakfast, and be good to go. Students do not need to be present. So parents, if you're on your way to work or you're on your way home from work and you want to drive through and grab the meals to take home to your children, you have that ability. You don't have, for a while there this fall, we had to have kids present. That is not in effect for the 2 weeks during the remote. So that's a good thing for you too. Here's a question for you. Someone's asking about crowded classrooms and how are teachers managing. So could you talk a little bit about the difference at different schools, about how many people chose to come back in person, and
Yeah.
how principals are managing when classrooms are pretty full?
Yeah. So it looks different from every campus. So like I talked about, my campus is basically a 50-50 split right now. And it's been a little more manageable with our numbers in the classroom. We do have a couple grade levels that are of higher numbers. And so we are definitely watching out for those numbers, ensuring that we can distance as best as we possibly can. Of course, the mitigation strategy of masks, washing hands has been extremely important on our campus. We have even used rooms next door if necessary to be able to support that. So that's my campus, but I do know that there's campuses that more students came back in person than maybe, and there's maybe less in the remote setting. And it's been, again, looking at your staffing, who needs to come back? How do you split some of those numbers to make the smaller classrooms? However that works for each individual campus, and it is looked at quite a bit, even until, we're close to the end of the semester, and I'm still constantly monitoring that as a principal to ensure that we're doing the best we can to keep those at a manageable size so that everybody can distance, or thinking very creatively about what do we do to ensure that we have obviously safety as a priority, but allowing for those learning opportunity or learning environments as well.
And now that the weather's better, I'm imagining that teachers are also
Yes.
taking advantage of outdoor learning spaces, correct?
Yes. So a lot of my teachers are doing that. Yeah, the weather's perfect right now. We're an outdoor school, so a lot of my teachers are having some lessons out in the classroom or out in the field. They also are having breakfast sometimes out there in the morning. We're a breakfast in the classroom and have been for many, many years. And so just ways to kind of get the students out to be able to spread out a little bit more. That's been really helpful.
That's great. I think all of that, we're so lucky to live in Arizona where everybody else now in the country is going inside and closing the doors.
Freezing.
This is when we feel like we can breathe again, right?
Yeah.
We're like,
Yeah.
we can go outside.
Yeah.
So I have a question here that I'll take about why aren't we using the AB schedule instead of remote to come back from break? And I think that's a great question. What it really boils down to is the lack of data. We don't know, even in an AB. Remember, an AB still means that adults and students will be on campus, and we don't know the health status of folks coming right out of break. We learned right after Thanksgiving that the numbers being reported over just that 4 days were significant. And until we sorted through it and realized, okay, they're big numbers, but they haven't been on campus for several days, the same thing's going to happen, I believe, after the holidays. And so we need to see what's the impact and how close to the opening those cases occur. And also, we know that we're seeing a spike right now in our schools from those folks who did get together on Thanksgiving and who unfortunately maybe got sick during a family gathering. And so making sure that we give enough time after Christmas and New Year's for kind of all those germs to work their way out and to make sure that folks are healthy. What I would ask, though, is during the holidays that you practice really great mitigation strategies as a family, that you wear your masks when you're out, that you wash your hands, that you try to limit large gatherings at any chance you have. I know it's so tempting during the holidays, and I am missing my family terribly that we can't get together in a large group. But I would say to you that the safest course of action and the quickest way to get our schools reopened would be to make sure that you're following the mitigation strategies. I showed a curve last night, if any of you watched the governing board meeting, and it kind of does a U, right? So where we were in June, and then slowly we ticked down the cases, and now we're going right back up, and we're just as high or higher than where we were in June. And what I think that curve says to me is that we know as a community what it takes to get it to go down, because where it went down was right about when school started, because it was a priority for us to start school. And so what I would say to our community, and I would ask for your help, is we know what it takes. We just need to do it again. We need to buckle down. We need to make sure that we're putting in all the mitigation we possibly can so that we can get that curve to go back down. So here's another question for us. It's all about the data and the three reds. We currently have 2 reds and a yellow. We will see tomorrow. Excuse me. We will see tomorrow what that means for us if we have 3 reds. I anticipate the COVID-like illness in the next 2 weeks will be 3 reds. But the question is and I'll take it, is around if we go to 3 reds, will we remain remote? And what I'm sharing with you is if we go to 3 reds, we are still going to use the data that we have collected school by school, classroom by classroom. So, we have said all along that the metrics are used to open schools, and then we use local data to close schools. And so local data is what we need in order to make those decisions. And that's what we're using the 2 weeks of remote to gather that local data. And so I anticipate that we will see 3 reds in the next couple of weeks if the trend doesn't change. And I haven't seen evidence that right now the trend is changing as far as positive cases in Arizona or in Maricopa County or in Mesa. So again, I just plead that we need your help. So do you want to talk a little bit about the mitigation strategies on campus and how that works at Longfellow, and maybe in elementary schools, what parents can expect to see from their students and what you're encouraging at home?
Yeah. So I'll talk about Longfellow specifically, and then I mean it's really what the expectation is for all elementaries. But we do when students arrive in the morning, they go directly to their class. So in the past, we used to have playground in the morning, and we just don't do that right now. And I think that's been really helpful. And I think the teachers and the students are enjoying that. They go in, they start breakfast, and can kind of get their morning started. Throughout the day, of course, masks are worn. We have hand sanitizer all over campus, encouraging of washing hands, different things like that. We also at Longfellow do not mix cohorts. So we have students go to recess with the same group of students. They're in a specific area with supervisor or with somebody supervising them. Same with lunch. And so we're really trying to be mindful that we are not mixing a bunch of students around, because I have found that when unfortunately you do have a positive case, you're needing to do all kinds of where was that student and what happened. We also, of course, are trying our very best to social distance as much as we can. At Longfellow, students do wear masks out at recess, but can step aside and take those masks off for mask breaks throughout the day, specifically at recess, if they can maintain that 6 feet of distance. We do a staggered dismissal. So we're sending our walkers at 5 minutes before our parent pickup come. That way we can kind of get the walkers home and then start our parent pickup process with car pickup. So several things like that have been just a priority for our campus. No visitors on campus, unfortunately, but parents, when they come in, really encouraging the masks, which my families at Longfellow have been fabulous about that. And then we also communicate every week with my families. We send out just a quick video similar to this, going over the data and then encouraging those mitigation strategies while at home. So please make sure that you're wearing a mask, washing hands, social distancing, also washing your mask. If students are wearing fabric masks, really ensuring that they are getting those cleaned regularly, because that's also a safety. We want our health and safety thing as well. So those are the things that really most elementary schools, I believe, are doing based off of direction and guidance that we've been provided and that we find as priority at Longfellow.
Do you want to talk a little bit? This is typically a great fun time of year to be an elementary school student, right? The holidays are coming. There's all kinds of things. How are you doing those things safely? How are you doing concerts? How are you doing the crafts? How are you doing the things that we normally do, but in this world of COVID, so that students stay safe?
Sure. So one thing that we always do quarterly is PBIS assemblies, so our positive behavior interventions and support assemblies. And we obviously have not been able to get together for those. So we've made those virtual. Last quarter, we did them as a recording and students could get on and every teacher showed those recordings. This quarter, we are going to do it live. We're going to be brave and do it live. I have a teacher that's really great at that. So we're finding different ways, I guess, to do those celebrations that are just a little bit different and unique. But overall, our teachers and students are really enjoying it and feeling really good about the fact that they're safe at that same time of being able to celebrate each other. And then as we're coming around, obviously through the holidays, teachers, it's something that when you're in the classroom and you're teaching the students, we're so used to collaboration and students kind of working together. And it's just being really mindful of it's okay to do certain things, but we have to be very mindful that we're not having students group together and all those different things. And I was in a classroom today where they still did some collaboration, but they stood at a distance and were able to point to the person they were going to talk with, and just unique ways. I mean, teachers are very creative, so they find ways to make those things still fun, exciting during this time that obviously is not something that we've ever dealt with before. So.
Yeah, and at our high schools, we're doing the same thing where they are doing concerts and such, still doing holiday celebrations, but they're doing them with very limited audience, obviously to spread them out. And in cases where there's multiple choirs at a school, it might take multiple nights to have the choir concerts because you wouldn't want to have all of them there at the same time. So
Right.
looking to reduce the capacity when we gather folks together, but or even I've seen some outdoor concerts where folks have gathered people in their amphitheaters and such to do some celebrations. So I think that I think that that's an important piece for us to continue those things that are important to us here in Mesa and still continue to celebrate them, but do them in the safest way possible. Um, still some conversations about some of the data and where we get the data from. I will tell you that as I shared before, we use the data from the county health department. We use the data from the Arizona Department of Health Services. And then whenever we have a concern about that, we call and ask questions and get more clarification. So we don't pretend to be experts in the epidemiology of a pandemic, but we have learned a lot, and we ask a lot of good questions and ask how it impacts us. But we feel like the most important data for us is the data about the positive cases in our schools. And if you remember, parents, when you signed back up to come back this fall, you signed an agreement with us to send your students back, and that you would check their health every day, and that you would be very good about reporting when they tested positive to us. And we rely on that. We see that as an agreement that we've made with our families, and we rely on that data to make the best, safest decisions for our students. And so I'd ask you to continue that, because it's been, for the most part, great this fall in your willingness to share what's going on in your families, what's going on in your community, letting us know when a positive test happens in your family, when a positive test happens for one of your children, so that we can make a decision about who else would be impacted by that positive. We want to make sure that if somebody's exposed, that they know they had a possible exposure, and they can watch themselves for symptoms, and that they can stay home to make sure that they get a test, or stay home until they're feeling better, so that they have an opportunity to get better and not to infect others, which is most important. Amy, if you had something to say to parents about how over the holiday break, what would you? This is your platform. What would you say?
My families will probably hear this from me in the next couple of days, but I would say biggest thing is, we want students on our campus. We want students in person, and it is going to be extremely important that everybody works together to ensure that that happens and that that continues to happen. So of course, I know we say it over and over, but the mask, wear your masks, wash your hands, social distance as much as possible. And I know from my personally, I've had to make some sacrifices with my family that have been really tough, but I think at the end of the day important, so that I can support the community. And so I think that that is the big key, is just please be mindful of those mitigations that you're doing at home, so that we at each of our schools can stay open, have our students on campus with us every day, because it's extremely important and something we all as principals, teachers, we want that. So
I think that's well said. I don't think I could have said that any better. I completely agree with you. We know the best place for our students to be is at school. And the reason that we're taking this pause in the remote environment and remote learning is so that we can assess and make sure that we have the safest, and we can make that school by school, classroom by classroom. So I would encourage you over the Christmas break, just as Mrs. Delatorre did, to be cautious, be mindful of the mitigation strategies, and make sure that you are sharing with us those positive cases once we get back into session on January 4th, come back into remote, that you are reporting to us, so that we can make really good decisions about the reopening on the 19th, school by school and classroom by classroom. So thank you for being here with us today. I want to share with you that if you need more information about our Safe, Strong, and Ready plan, it is available on mpsaz.org. And there is lots of information about mitigation strategies. Please be watching for an update to that. We will be updating that when we come back in January with additional information to share with families. We have new guidance to share. Many of you know that the CDC guidance, I shared that last week, talking about the CDC guidance changing in quarantine recommendations. So that information is on the website. So I would encourage you, Cody, do you want to share that screen so folks can see what to expect and where to get the information? If they'd like additional information about our plan, that's at Mesa, mpsaz.org/reopen. And then, of course, Enrollment information is available, technical support, parent resources, and every school has a web page. And as Amy was sharing earlier, if you have concerns, she encouraged you to reach out to your building principal. And on that web page, you can find their phone numbers and their email addresses to reach out to them directly. So I would encourage you to do that if you have specific questions about on-site centers or the learning environment that you chose for your students. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Amy, for being our guest.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you being here, and we hope you all have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.